So there are new questions about comments that Vice President Pence just made there back in March to Bret Baier in exchange back in March, where he said that it was the first time he was hearing about Michael Flynn's work for foreign governments. But the New York Times is reporting a different story. The President Trump's transition team, which the VP did head, was told weeks before the inauguration Flynn was under investigation for working as a paid lobbyist for Turkey. Joining us now, Tom Rogan, foreign policy columnist for National Review and a domestic policy columnist for Opportunity Lives. First, I want to give you some breaking news that we just got in from the Associated Press that the top Republican on Senate Intelligence Panel is saying that Michael Flynn's lawyers say that he will not honor subpoena. In other words, he will not testify. And he has a lot of answers people want to hear. Specifically, did he tell President Trump's transition team weeks before the inauguration that he was indeed under federal investigation for secretly working as a paid lobbyist for Turkey during the campaign? The New York Times says that conversation did happen. You just heard Vice President Mike Pence telling Bret Baier 2 months ago he had no idea about it. What say you?
Well, I think there are two takeaways. Number one, Mike Flynn clearly, I think on the advice of his lawyer, that it seems that they probably expect charges, that he would not want to go up to the Hill in the sense that that might incriminate him in the process of law coming up. The second point, I think, is the broader point about the White House interactions, that who is talking to who? Is the president leading in a concerted sense? Is he bringing coalescence between the various members of his cabinet and his staff? Or is he talking to people in separate blocks so that there's this spread of miscommunication, which in turn feeds what he hates most, which is leaks?
Okay, here's what's disturbing, because Mike Flynn is the center of this primary investigation between Russia and, NBC is reporting that Flynn and Paul Manafort, in fact, are the primary focus of the FBI investigation into the Russian campaign interference. CBS News is reporting that fired FBI Director James Comey has more memos coming out on this, and he is itching to testify to Congress. So there's a lot of bubbling going on. There are contradictions, and then, of course, credibility issues at stake here. And this White House doesn't necessarily have the greatest reputation when it comes to credibility, because a lot of untruths have been revealed through leaks. What more do you expect to come out of this?
Well, the simple answer is a lot. I mean, you see the drip, 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 which is turning into a flood, 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 and that's a function of the discrepancy, as you note, between what the White House has said, what the president has said, and what has turned out to be true. But there's an undercurrent here of, quite frankly, stupidity in terms of their management of these issues. The best thing about American democracy, and it is unique, is that in America it's very hard to keep secrets. It's very hard to conceal major things that are incongruent with what you have said, especially if you're in the executive base of the White House. And so I don't know what their strategy was in thinking that they could conceal some of this. And of course, the political impact, as we're about to see, I'm sure, from Paul Ryan, is at best real anger on the Hill and a depreciation of trust towards the White House. But at worst, this slow movement away from, you know what, we have to distance ourselves from Trump, because that next flood could potentially bring us down as well.
And we are seeing a lot of Republicans that are slowly distancing themselves from the president, but nonetheless, there needs to be unity, not only on the Hill, but at the White House. This man is our president. And we also need to hear more about exactly what is it that Vice President Mike Pence knew. Now, we know that he was lied to by Michael Flynn, that he did not know about his ties to Russia, and that he should have admitted that, and that was out there in the open. But if Vice President Mike Pence did indeed know that Flynn had these secret exchanges with hundreds of thousands of dollars exchanged with Turkey as a lobbyist, that's pretty big. And if we know Pence is a loyalist to Donald Trump, as everybody is who works for him in that White House, then it's an interesting line. At what point do they cross that line as a loyalist and be truthful? And that's the news that we're probably going to be hearing more and more about as you talk about this flood.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's the issue. And look, you're already seeing that, right? That the leaks are escalating, the discontent in the White House is growing, the discontent on the Hill is growing, and ultimately individuals in politics traditionally look out for their own interests. The counterpoint to that has been until now that they have believed that their loyalty to President Trump would give them the better benefit.
All right, Tom Rogan, thank you very much. And of course, we are awaiting Paul Ryan to come out and speak at a news conference any moment, so keep it here.